This episode of Cell and Gene the podcast is brought to you in partnership with Thermo Fisher Scientific. Thermo Fisher's cell therapy processing instruments are designed to help customers transition from process development to commercial manufacturing, utilized as standalone devices or integrated as part of a closed modular process. Thermo Fisher Scientific recommends Gibco CTS DynaSelect Magnetic Separation System, which is a next-gen cell isolation and activation instrument. Gibco CTS Xenon Electroporation System allows customers full control to optimize for a variety of cell types and payloads. And Gibco CTS Rotea Counterflow Centrifugation System is a closed cell processing system supporting a broad range of protocols for cell separation, washing, and concentration. Customers can rely on and streamline their drug development process with Applied Biosystems QualTrack qPCR and dPCR quality control tools for robust and reliable genetic analysis across various phases of drug development, supported by relevant, compliant documentation. Hello, listeners, and welcome to this episode of Cell and Gene the podcast. I'm your host, Erin Harris, and joining me is Parviz Shamlou, Vice President and Executive Director at Thomas Jefferson University, and he and I are going to discuss Jefferson Institute for Bioprocessing, or JIB, and its role in the future of cell and gene therapies. But before we do, Parviz, welcome to Cell and Gene the podcast. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Erin. Thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to participate in this podcast. And I actually believe it's very timely for us to talk about certain things, especially as we start coming out of COVID-19 pandemic and as we start getting ready for what I call the new normal. A lot has happened over the past 2 or 3 years, and I'm glad to be talking with you today.
Good. I'm so glad. So let's jump right in. So first, I'd like for you to explain to us, like I said, the Jefferson Institute for Bioprocessing, or JIB, which we know is a full service development and training organization that specializes in biopharmaceuticals and biologics. I would like tell us what it is, the why behind it, and your role within JIB.
Thank you. Absolutely. It's a pleasure. So Jefferson Institute for Bioprocessing is a part of Thomas Jefferson University. It was created by Thomas Jefferson University almost 5 years ago with a single mission of closing the gap in workforce development, specifically for the biopharmaceutical and biologic industries. So that was the mission, the vision that they had for JIB, and it hasn't changed. Over the past 5 years, and now, by the way, I was very, very fortunate. I am fortunate to be part of the team here, actually helping to implement that vision. So we've spent the past 4 or 5 years developing what I call today 3 major business verticals that are all designed to deliver that mission. All of these verticals, the 3 verticals, if you take them together, they have certain things in common. They are all designed to focus on industry. They're all designed to be industry facing. So if I start with the first of those verticals, which is our traditional degree program, we have a range of credential programs. Our flagship program is a master's program, which is a full calendar 12-month program in biopharmaceutical process engineering. It includes multiple concentrations within it, including one on API manufacturing, drug product formulation and fill finish, analytical, regulatory, and quality, aseptic techniques and methods. Research and development is another concentration. We offer the program also as a part-time program for people who are in industry, do not want to give their jobs up, but nevertheless, they still want to further their education and develop their careers further in the biopharma industry. So that is one of the master's program is a flagship program that we have. We also have a PhD program. Again, the PhD program is even more industry-facing. It's actually industry-sponsored. Candidates can be embedded into industry. And we will be here as supervisors. We have each candidate will have a team of industry and as well as TJU advisors. Beyond that, the PhD program is as rigorous, intellectually challenging, and demanding as conventional PhD programs. We expect the candidates to publish their results in peer-reviewed journals. We expect them to present their results in the form of conference presentations at national, international conferences. Oftentimes, colleagues ask me, if your PhD programs are industry sponsored, will they allow you to publish the data? I will tell you, after 30 years of experience in these types of PhDs, the answer is absolutely yes. Industry wants and welcomes publications as much as academics do. So we find industry-sponsored PhD a very rich source of PhD programs. And these are, by the way, also designed for people that want to build their careers in industry rather than in academia. So that's a very, very good program that we have. We also have program, Erin, at the other end of the spectrum, designed for entry-level technicians and operators. So we want to be able to, and in fact, we need more people in biopharma at entry levels, operators and technicians, than we need at PhD levels. PhD typically takes 3 to 4 years, but we need also programs that can prepare people within 6 months, within 3 months, and get them enough, if you will, understanding and knowledge so that they can get into their first jobs. But we want to go beyond that for these type of candidates. We want to give them the ability to build on what they achieve. So at the entry and technician level, operator level, we have certificates and credit that can be that are transferable and stackable. So these programs help our candidates get their first job and then also continue with their education on a part-time basis, build their careers in that way. So those are the services we provide in our first vertical credential. I just want to touch on one other area that I hope you and the listeners will find it interesting. And that is, we were created here to address this whole issue of workforce development for this sector. And we knew from the very beginning that we can only accommodate certain number of students in this space. So oftentimes we are asked, how do you plan to scale this up? How can you increase the number of participants in your programs with the physical space that you have? And that's, I'm hoping that you might find that of interest and your listeners will find that of interest. And our, TJU's approach to scaling up this problem is through what our new president, Mark Chikachinsky, calls food partnership. I've talked about this oftentimes in my LinkedIn, but the concept of food partnership is very, very attractive. I think it's one day all other universities will be doing it as we are starting to do it. And this becomes even more important, in a post-COVID environment. Very few academic institutions can deal with this acute shortage of workforce in biopharma on their own. One way of doing this is by pooling resources from different institutions, creating additional value for their students without significantly more additional resources. That's the concept of pool partnership. And, we love that approach. It applies perfectly to JIB and JIB's situation. Mm-hmm. Our first of these pool partnerships, you will be pleased to know, has already been completed, and we are expecting the first cohort fall of 2023, is a collaborative program with Temple University.
Oh, nice.
Yes, you know this. School of Pharmacy at Temple has a very strong presence in regulatory affairs, and they've been doing a super job. Much of it focused on traditional pharmaceutical. And we had a number of discussions with them here. They saw the facility, they fell in love with the facility that we have in here. We have focused on biopharmaceutical. So the obvious question was, why not pool our resources together, create a new master's program that focuses on regulatory aspects of biopharmaceuticals. And we have it, it's signed. It has the full support of senior leadership at TJU as well as Temple. And it's something that I am absolutely sure will grow in times to come. So that's one example. Right now, as I speak with you, we have MOUs with along exactly the same type of thinking with Northeastern University, with Villanova University, with Penn State University, and with a number of other universities in the country. The idea here is to go beyond the physical dimensions of JIB, allow students to have access to JIB while they do some of their didactic classes back in their home base. That's our way of, if you will, scaling up the opportunities and education that JIB provides. And just one step further, we have developed those type of pool partnerships also with universities overseas, because this is again on a global, we have a TJU global, and with their help, we have now all formal programs with universities in Argentina and with Portugal, and more is in the pipeline. So watch this space. JIB and TJU will grow in this whole space of bioprocessing and biomanufacturing.
Absolutely. I mean, and exciting times to come, and an organization that is not only to the people who are within it and have a plethora of opportunity across the entire life cycle of biopharmaceuticals, but also no matter where they're located. The fact that it's not only local to the greater Philadelphia area, Pennsylvania, then domestically, and then internationally. That's wonderful.
That's how that. I know you were wanting to ask about the intersection of science, industry, and life, but this is what we're talking about. This is so. That was just the first of the verticals.
Sure.
Now, the second vertical and third vertical services are even more closer to industry. The second service that JIB provides is really focused on training industry professionals, people who are working and want to upskill their knowledge and for multiple reasons. I tell you this, many large biopharma companies, Fortune 500 companies, if you will, have been and are shifting from their focus from traditional small pharmaceutical molecules to large biopharmaceuticals and biologics. And to do this successfully, they know they need new talent, which comes from our first vertical. But they also know they have to train and retrain their existing workforce. And that is where the second vertical is designed to help. If I tell you that over the past 4 or 5 years that we've been in operation, we have delivered over 6,000 training days to industry. We have delivered nearly 100 separate courses to industry. And these courses cover everything from upstream to downstream operation, aseptic techniques, analytical, regulatory, statistical design of experiments, continuous processing, process modeling, and process integration. You name it, we have them in that space of bioprocessing, biomanufacturing. Each course is typically between 2 to 3 days. Each day lasts 7 to 8 hours. So these are what I usually refer to as intensive and immersive. We limit the numbers of participants to a maximum of 15. Typically, numbers are between average 10 to 12. Each course is customized for a client, and it effectively is conducted in a very, very consultative mode, if that makes sense to you. So we want these people, candidates, participants, to have access to all of the facility and equipment. So a course can be designed for people who want to spend 80% of those 3 days in the facility actually learning about equipment operations and design, or conversely, we can spend much of the time in the class talking about case studies and so on. So that's a powerful vertical that we have, and is growing rapidly, not just for clients within Pennsylvania, but beyond as well. And the last vertical that I want to talk about, the service that we provide, is to help, really designed to help the startup companies, small companies. And there are many of them in the Greater Philadelphia region. Most of them, I know you will be pleased to hear it, a lot of them are in cell and gene therapy, and they need help to move their discoveries from what I call bench side to bedside. Mm-hmm. And we do a lot of work with them. Works are all carried out under confidentiality, so they feel comfortable that the IPs belong to them. It's a very IP-friendly approach. And we have a number of clients right now. And I know we want to move on to other things, but if there is time at the end, I can talk about specific projects as far as I can, and confidentiality allows me to do. So those are the 3 verticals that I talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I would love to hear about how JIB is working with those startups in Philadelphia-based startups, but also, even right. Others that might be around the country. But before we do get to that, I do want to better understand and have our listeners, kind of wrap their heads around, given what we just talked about, the 3 pillars, how does JIB actually, how are you and your team moving cell and gene therapies forward?
So in two ways, through training. So we have, in fact, you will be pleased to know that right now, if you hear the noise behind you, it's because there's construction going on. And that's part of a multi-million-dollar investment by TJU. And we also were very, very fortunate to receive $2 million from RACP grant to go towards building a cell and gene therapy education and training base. So if you come back to here, and of course, I should perhaps also say that because of COVID, the construction work has been delayed by about 6 months. Sure. This facility should have been ready by last December, early January. Because of COVID, the delay means that we'll be ready by the end of June, early July. When that facility is ready, we will have a total of 6 additional BSL-2 clean room capability. And those in each of these rooms, we will be able to not only provide training to people who need the training, but also, as I said, help and work with companies that need scale up development to move their cell and gene therapy product from discovery all the way to clinical. That is where JIB can contribute to the future success of cell and gene therapy. in this area, in the region and beyond. It's a powerful approach. And cell and gene, you know that cell and gene therapy in terms of investment has been so rich in the region and beyond. Mm-hmm. Philadelphia continues to be one of the major hubs in cell and gene therapy. And I often think about this, to become a hub, you have to have a number of key components, including investment, including manufacturing space, mm-hmm. including excellent first-class translational research, which we have in so many universities in this area. You also need to have commercialization capability. And last, but by no means least, you need to have process development and workforce development capability. And that is where JIB is focusing, helping these companies wherever we can with process development and also workforce development.
Nice. Now, this might be a good time to talk about, to the extent that you can, some of the startups that you're working with and how you're working with them in those ways that you just mentioned. So if you're able to name them, sure, that's great. If not, sure, that's okay too.
Sure. No, that's okay. Just to give you a high level, this would be generic. So you'll see one example of where JIB has unique expertise, people that we have. By the way, 6 months ago, we have, in fact, more than that, it was about 6-7 months ago, we recruited a super talent from West Coast area, someone that spent a lot of time with some of the largest cell and gene therapy companies. So he is part of my team now, actually leading and driving the cell and gene therapy. So we're very proud. We have all of what I want to say is that we have all of the resources, people, and infrastructure to deliver what we promise. One example, we have a company that is interested and is targeting Parkinson as a disease area. And the idea here is to use cells that we develop. Cells are derived from what we call the iPSC-based cells. And then these cells are grown, developed, and prepared for injection into a patient's brain. But you know, and most people, listeners will know, that in order to transport cells from point A to point B, from manufacturing site to hospital, where those are then injected into patients, cells need to be frozen.
Right.
Freezing cells is a very, very common operation. However, most cells are frozen in a formulation that includes certain reagents. One of the most important reagents is something called DMSO. A DMSO is a reagent that we use at typically 10% for freezing operation. Now, that is fine if you are freezing your cells for discovery purposes, or you're using cells for research. But if you want to inject those cells into a patient's brain, you want to make sure that you don't have things that are toxic to the patient. So this project that we have, a specific project that is targeting the development of a new generation of formulation for freezing cells that are DMSO-free. And that DMSO-free formulation is a big deal. And that we are very proud of. And people are working on it, even as I speak. There are colleagues in the lab running these cells. And hopefully, now the idea is that the company will be in clinical trials next year beyond, and we need to be with them, support them, help them, make sure that they are successful. So that's just one example of the type of projects we have.
Well, and that's a really important example. And so thank you for sharing that. I wanted to ask you about your partnership with NIBRT, National Institute for Bioprocessing Research and Training. Can you talk to us a little bit about JIB's partnership and its benefits?
Right. So NIBRT, it absolutely glad you mentioned that. NIBRT was JIB's first partner when we started all those years ago, and we were talking about our plans and our visions. And NIBRT was the first partner that we talked to, and we continue to have that strong relationship with NIBRT even today. We value that partnership as we move forward. And as we plan our next, what I call the next 5 years. But today, it's important to point this out. Today, TJU has expanded into so many other areas. The partnership with NIBRT, still very strong moving forward, is focused on only one of those verticals that I talked about, one of those pillars, which is training for industry professionals. We now have many more partnerships on the educational programs that I talked about through those pooled partnerships. We also have this new programs, which, pillars, you call it, I call them verticals, that are on process development, helping our local industry. So while it's like I hope I can say this, JIB is almost like the first love. You will always, be close to us, but we have many, many more partnerships, many more activities that takes us beyond NIBRT.
Sure, that makes sense. We talked a little bit about certainly, manufacturing and supply chain, but I wanted to get your input on the ways in which JIB, given the ongoing, manufacturing challenges that cell and gene therapies specifically have, when working with JIB, how can future leaders tackle the issues that cell and gene therapies face in the manufacturing stage?
Right. So, really, very, very good question. Very, very good content. But we can spend the rest of the this interview and rest of the day talking about this. Right. I usually say that cell and gene therapy as an industry is in its infancy compared to monoclonal antibody. It took us nearly 40 years to get monoclonal antibody to where it is today, which is starting to pay dividend and so successful. Cell and gene therapy will get there. And we want to make sure it doesn't take 40 years. We want to make sure that we take a lot of the trainings and learnings from monoclonal antibody and transfer them to cell and gene so we can get to the end faster. And again, we have a lot of those expertise here within not just cell and gene therapy, but also monoclonal antibody. There are areas that we need to develop in cell and gene, and we are again working. You might call this our research and development, R&D component. Sometimes a client comes to us and they simply want us to develop the process and deliver it to them. Beyond that, we want to look ahead and say, where is this industry moving to? Where is it going in 5-10 years from now? Where will it be? And we want to be part of that journey and make sure that we are with them in that process. I can tell you, for example, in cell and gene therapy, much of the focus today, right now, is on autologous cell therapy, right? There are, last time I counted, correct me if I'm wrong, there are 27 approved cell and gene therapy products out there. 6 of those are in CAR T cell therapy. So 6 out. Practically all of them are on autologous, which means you get a patient's own cell, T cells, get them at over a period of 8 or 9 hours at hospital, bring them over into a facility like this or into a GMP facility, manufacturing facility, engineer and manipulate them, grow them, clean them, freeze them, by the way, hopefully in a DMSO-free formulation, and then ship them back to hospital where it's injected into infused into the patient. That's the process today. It works, but it has huge challenges. We know that. Number one, it's patient specific. It's specific to a patient. And that makes it very, very expensive. Mm-hmm. Each of these therapies costs roughly around $500 to $1 million, depending on how you look at the costing. So they are expensive. They're also highly variable in their outcome. Imagine the variability of your starting material, which are the patient's own cells. Those cells are taken from a patient who may be in a stage 3, a stage 4 cancer. So those are not the best type of cells to be working on. And so the future, as we see it, and a lot of people agree with this, is in what we call having a universal CAR T cell. And that's the beginning of an allogeneic process for cell therapy. And we like to be part of that. We like to be part of develop the processes for allogeneic cell therapy. We know a lot about how to do that. We know more about that than we know about autologous, because process development for allogeneic will be much closer to process development for something like a monoclonal antibody, where we have a cell line that never changes. And so those are the things that I see developing, and those are areas where I believe JIB can come in and help. And of course, there's a lot of need for automation and control. A lot of these processes right now are manual, time consuming, and that adds to the cost. Regulatory needs to be, developed and advanced. Harmonization of regulatory aspects of these cell and gene therapy is a big area. And we like, if you will, if we can do this, we like to be a hub of activities for next generation cell and gene therapy here at Jefferson Institute for Bioprocessing at Thomas Jefferson University. We want whatever development is taking place to be here. We like to be able to invite speakers, international researchers, to spend time here with us, help not just our training people, but our researchers, so we can put that back into the community.
Well, and certainly you are most certainly doing that. That's for sure. I just have a couple of more questions here. One, tell us where JIB is physically located. I think most of us know Thomas Jefferson University, located in Center City, but JIB is in Montgomery County, which is outside of the city. So tell us a little bit about where you're located.
Very good. Thank you so much. I'd be delighted. JIB is located at the Springhouse Innovation Park, just off Norristown Road, off 309 in Lower Gwinnett. So that's where we are. And within walking distance, people often ask me why is JIB located in Montgomery and where it is. And I say one reason is because we have no car parking problems here. We have plenty of space. But to be seriously, we are within walking distance some of the largest Fortune 500 companies here. So, and having interactions with these big giants in that area it helps us enormously. It's we are about 25 miles from Philadelphia Center City. You're absolutely right, Montgomery County. The other reason we wanted it to be here, and I wish I could tell you I had something to do with the selection, but the location was selected well before I got into the picture here by my senior colleagues and leadership. And they had a vision. They had a vision which I really like. They wanted people to be able to take a flight to Philadelphia International Airport, get an Uber and get to this facility quickly, be here, spend 2 or 3 days on one of these training courses, and then quietly get back to the airport and get back home. And that has some attractions to it. We have beautiful, if you've been in this area, you'll see how beautiful it is in terms of surrounding. We have restaurants and hotels, lots of accommodation. So it's almost like, I like to think of it, when clients from industry come here, it's almost like a retreat. They're here, distracted, not get distracted from all of the activities that go around the big city. There's not much they can do except be here. They are immersed
and focus.
Yes, and focused. Exactly what we wanted. So that's why we are here, and it's a good place. I love it. I absolutely love it.
I do too. I live in another part of Montgomery County, so right. I think you've chosen, and the leaders who chose the location prior to you joining, they made the right decision for sure, for all the reasons you stated. One more quick question: what would you like Cell and Gene, the podcast listeners, to truly take away from today's discussion about JIB's potential impact, or excuse me, not potential impact on cell and gene therapies?
Well, thank you so much again for the opportunity to talk with you, and I'm really, really delighted to have this conversation with you. I know people talk about the slowing down of the economy, and there's been a drop in investment in cell and gene therapy. I typically say, would you have expected anything else in the wake of a once in a century pandemic? So that's all understandable. I do believe perhaps short term, the rest of 2023, perhaps early 2024 will be somewhat of a challenge. But when I look ahead, I see nothing but good news for biopharma, biomanufacturing, and cell and gene therapy within it. I was delighted to read early this week that Pfizer is invested $43 billion in the wake of COVID pandemic. Pfizer is investing $43 billion in next generation cancer therapies that are based on antibody drug conjugates. This is big news right now. And that's just an example of the kind of investment is going on. In 2023, for example, the investment in cell and gene therapy was roughly around $7 billion, expected to rise to $17 billion in the next 5 years. So these are major, major investment. And I will encourage the listeners to stay on course, stay with the vision, and future is bright for cell and gene therapy because these therapies are curative. Mm-hmm. There is not, I see it's incredibly important that we don't let short-term challenges stop us from investment. This country has been very good in staying with the investment and not giving up, and it's paid dividend in the past. We are leading and have been leading the biopharma, biomanufacturing for as long as I remember. Now, competition is coming. There's no question that there is competition from China, from India, from Europe, and competition is good and it's healthy. It keeps us moving. But we are leading this area, and we want to stay there. So that's my message to everybody.
Good. Well, thank you. We've ended the formal discussion of our episode, and at the end of every episode, I like to talk to my guests about who they are when they're not in the office of the lab. And so, my question to you are: what are your hobbies? What do you like to do when you're not at JIB?
When I'm not at JIB, I usually say to my friends, I have 3 passions in life. Bioprocessing is one of them, and I've been in this space for as long as I remember, all my professional life. But my other perhaps the most important passion for me are my grandchildren. My grandchildren are the best things that have ever happened to me. I have 4 of them, 2 from my son, 2 from my daughter, and I love them to bits. They live in England, and I see them 2-3 times a week on Zoom. Although they may not want to see me, I make sure I see them. So that's a great passion. My other passion, believe it or not, is photography. Again, something that I have been passionate about. I have a site actually on out there that I put my photographs in. I'm passionate about anything that is technically difficult to photograph, including, for example, birds in flight, anything in flight, So yeah, I whatever time when I'm not doing bioprocessing and biomanufacturing, I'm either on my camera or talking with my grandkids.
Oh, that's wonderful. Do you take, when you're with them physically, do you take lots of pictures of your grandchildren?
Oh yes. Oh, I have millions of them.
Spoken like a grandparent.
Absolutely. And I'm trying to develop that passion in my grandson, who's 11. So I promised to buy him a camera next time I go down to England to visit him. And he's got his iPhone. And he's practicing with his iPhone now that he knows that I'm very passionate about this. He's very nice, very, very nice.
That's wonderful. And you could share all of your expertise and your passion for it with him. Oh, that's wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing all that. All right, listeners, that wraps up this episode of Cell and Gene, the podcast featuring TJU Jib's Parviz Shamlou. Parviz, this was wonderful. Thank you so much for your time.
You're very welcome. Once again, thank you for the invitation and the very best of luck. Bye-bye.
Visit us regularly at cellandgene.com, register for our e-newsletter, and if you haven't already, subscribe to Cell and Gene, the podcast, and we'll talk to you soon.